Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if one person has their moon in Capricorn and the other one has their moon in Pisces. Now, remember that we're talking about the moon signs. I'm pretty sure that I've done this sun sign combination, and there's going to be some differences there because the moon signs are going to really talk about emotional reactions to life and things like that. But there's going to be similar themes because, if your moon is in Capricorn, it's going to carry some of the same concerns as the sun in Capricorn. Let's review. What does Capricorn represent? Capricorn represents achievement, career, status in society. Capricorn rules the 10th house that deals with those things, your legacy and your reputation in the world. And Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So that disciplined side of life, the ambitious side. Saturn is very frugal and doesn't like to waste anything. As a matter of fact, I believe the motto for Capricorn is I use, but also I think I've seen I conserve. And you think about conservative. Somebody who's conservative, people naturally jump to political affiliation, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the idea of preserving what already has been established. So people who don't have a respect for, let's say, their possessions, they might feel like, oh, well, if it breaks, I'll just get another one. And, they don't even care about it. People who take care of what they have will be like, well, this is something that cost me money. It took me time to earn this money, and I'm going to take care of this. And so you will find that I'm not going to even go into this because I was thinking about somebody I know who's actually a Capricorn sun sign that reused certain things, and it was kind of interesting. But the bottom line is that this person is coming from, in some cases, it can be a fear-based belief system as well, because the moon represents our conditioned response. The moon is considered karmic, and I'm assuming it's because our emotions may be wired from even past lifetimes. And also, the moon can represent our mother and how she treated us, and maybe her disposition. It doesn't have to be her sun sign or moon sign, but just the way that she behaved for whatever reason. And so I'm also going to look at it from that standpoint, okay? Because if you're a woman, the moon is especially important in Vedic astrology, Eastern astrology. They really place great importance on a woman's moon sign. So if you hear some astrologers saying, listen for your moon sign, some of them are Vedic astrologers or they have a training in that. But I just feel that you can tell a lot about somebody based on their moon sign. As a woman, how you model yourself after your mother or how you were influenced by your mother. So I'm not I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I don't have my thoughts organized, and I'm kind of like introducing all these points. So I'm like, okay, I'm a kid in a candy store. Where do I want to go? So basically, what I would say is the person with the moon in Capricorn is going to be the more serious person of the two. Now, again, we have to look at sun signs. For instance, if a person has the moon in Capricorn and their sun sign is Cancer or Virgo or something like that, then they're going to be definitely very serious. But what if their sun is in Leo? They might be much more carefree, even though they're very responsible. Um, that's one of the things about Capricorn is a sense of duty, a sense of being responsible. So the person with the moon in Pisces may be coming from a background where they didn't have a lot of structure in their life. Their mother may have been lost to herself. She may have had mental illness. She may have been a victim in relationship, maybe more than one relationship, where she was the one who was getting abused. I know I'm saying all the negative things. The reason I focus more on the challenging things when I'm talking about moon signs is because I feel that that's how you separate it out from the sun. Is that the sun is more of the externalized and therefore impersonal types of influence. It's more of our outer thrust, like our goals and things like that. And, as I stated earlier, the moon is our emotional response that's been conditioned through past experiences. And so it's very like automatic, when you have, that's why they say so much now. They go trigger warning, or I've been triggered, or you've been triggered, because they're describing how people can just get very reactive based on their emotional triggers. And the triggers are coming from pain, from the pain body. It's a great thing to read Eckhart Tolle because he talks about the pain body because, it's really mixed in with the ego. I haven't read any of his books in a long time, but I do listen to his lectures. So I'm kind of just guessing about that. But this idea of having to, identify with a particular self that we have, it's like a false self, and then have that false self get triggered causes pain to the individual because they're trying to protect something that really is an illusion. So, but we do have traumatic experiences in life, and sometimes something comes up that seems to mimic it, that seems to kind of be almost the same as what we experienced. And it's almost like freaking out. But there's such an automatic response there that until a person really gets wise about this and they start to take more control over their responses. And this is one of the reasons why people who deliberately trigger other people, they do it knowing the Achilles heel or the weak spot in that other person, and they know that they can control them through their triggers. So that's another good reason not to allow yourself to just be like this robotic individual who just is always reactive, because then you don't give away your power. So in this case, the moon in Pisces person is very empathic, which means that if you're this individual, you can feel the pain of other people. Again, you may specifically have seen the pain with your mother and what she went through. And if you perceived her as a victim of some sort, then you may feel protective over other people. And what happens, what I have found with people with the moon in Pisces, is that they can sometimes be prone to pick the wrong types of people in relationships. And I'm not just talking about romantic relationships. It could even be if you're a woman, you have a girlfriend, and she's takes advantage of you or something, and or puts you down a lot, and you just kind of hang out with these people who are not necessarily supportive, or they're taking from you in some way, exploiting you in some way. So there's a very kindly nature that tends to be with this moon sign. Of course, the sun sign will alter that. If the sun is in Leo and the moon is in Pisces, the person will be, and you have to look at the rising sign too. I should mention that because that can be how other people perceive you. But I'm just talking about maybe the core self. The person with a fire sign, sun sign, may be more outwardly confident, but they might be quite emotionally vulnerable. There is like a real dreamy quality that is true for Pisces in general, but the moon especially, because the moon is very creative. These people can be super artistic and spiritual, very intuitive. It might not be controlled in some cases if there are hard angles from the moon to Neptune or whatever, other planets, the person may, or to Mars or something, their emotions may block their ability to be a clear channel in terms of intuition. And sometimes I think, and this could be true if the sun is in water in particular, where they are much more prone to be subjective. In other words, they have a hard time viewing life from a detached perspective. Everything relates to their own personal little drama. And so that's important if you're going to do the type of work that I'm doing here. Being I don't call myself a psychic, but people who do, who call themselves psychics, I notice this when I'm listening to certain people. I feel like they are injecting their own fantasy or desires into whatever it is that they're saying. And I have seen this, especially in the last 2 years when people have been talking about what's going to happen on the world stage. They came up with some really outlandish stuff because I feel like they wanted it to be true. And that was when I started to really question some of these people, not just because it didn't come true, but I just suspected that they were biased, that they really did. They may not have known it, but they're like, "Oh, I'm channeling," but they were just telling everybody their fantasies. Um, and So you have to be careful if you have the moon in Pisces and you want to be a healer. That has to do with being intuitive, that you're able to separate out your stuff from other people's stuff and to be as objective as possible. Um, but the other thing about this is that other people's energy can affect you very strongly. So you may find that you are drawn to healing professions or helping professions, like let's say something along the lines of a social worker or a counselor of some kind. You may want to do that, but when people spill their guts to you, you might be really negatively affected, adversely affected. So if you are going to do that kind of work, you're going to have to find some way to be able to protect your energy so that you don't absorb other people's negative energy and it doesn't affect you adversely. Um, I have noticed so many people, whether it's an astrologer or just like I don't know what they call themselves, but those people that, you know, give energy updates, whatever those people are, psychics, whatever you want to call them, channelers. I noticed that some of them do not do personal readings. And yes, I'm sure some of them don't need the money, maybe, but some of them might, and yet they don't want to do it. Why is that? Because giving personal readings can open you up to that kind of thing. So you have to be very, you have to have a lot of awareness when you have the moon in Pisces, because the subconscious can creep up on you, or the unconscious. The 12th house that Pisces rules is about the unconscious mind. I've heard subconscious, but the unconscious makes more sense because it's the house of past lives. And when you think about incarnating in this lifetime, do you remember your past lives? I have like some vague ideas, but I don't know if they're true. And so we tend to have amnesia when we come into this lifetime. Not everybody. Some people are very aware of past lifetimes, but that would be unconscious memories because they're still there, but they're just very deeply buried. If you get hypnotized and have a past life regression, you can bring out these memories. Or reading in the with the Akashic records. So anyway, so the thing is that these two moon signs are quite different because the Pisces moon is going to be more sensitive. The Capricorn moon is pretty hard ass. Now again, it's important to note that if the person has a sun in a water sign, they will probably be more sensitive. Or even well, I'll just leave it at that, a water sign. But sometimes if a person does have this, like this Capricorn moon, they may feel like their philosophy of life may be that, I was going to say life is a bitch and then you die. No, that's a little bit too harsh. But just kind of like if they experienced anything like a financial hardship growing up, they may be like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you know, pull up your big girl panties and deal with that. That may be their emotional response to other people. They may think people are too whiny, have a victim mentality. Well, sometimes people with the moon in Pisces do tend to have victim mentalities because they tend to be fatalistic. And the reason for this is because they're very sensitive and they may have been through trauma. And when you're a child and you go through trauma, you're helpless because you cannot say, okay, well, I'm just going to get a job and move out, save my money and move out. You're 6 years old. You can't do that. So you're kind of like stuck in that hellacious situation for the most part. I know that there are people who are really young who run away, like when they're 12 years old or something. But I mean, by that time, they probably have experienced so much trauma that even running away would be an improvement to staying with whatever they're dealing with. But yeah, so what can happen to people with the moon in Pisces, especially if they had a mother who was kind of weak, who didn't have good boundaries, who didn't have good judgment sometimes, and they trusted the wrong person, again because they were kind-hearted. They might have been abused themselves and didn't have the strength to assert themselves or the self-love to assert themselves. And sometimes they can be drug addicts or alcoholics, and that has its own set of circumstances, mental illness. But on the positive side, the mother could be an artist, a mystic, and maybe somebody who is very unconditional in their love. And of course, it could be all of the above, people are very complicated. So this kind of role model may have led the person with the moon in Pisces to feel like life is very chaotic and, unpredictable. There's no rhyme or reason to things. And they kind of like don't really believe that they can shape their own reality. So in a weird way, this could be a good combination. First of all, it's a good combination because Capricorn and Pisces form a sextile, which is considered a friendly angle, a cooperative angle. But officially, they have to be within a certain degree span of one another to be an official sextile, but the elements are compatible. So the Capricorn moon person can help the Pisces moon to be more emotionally detached and to not let their emotions get the best of them when they're trying to achieve their goals. Because that they, Pisces can be self-destructive, and because Pisces rules like fantasy and um, escapism. So Pisces people tend to be very artistic, and they love movies and music, anything that's creative, whether they're creating it or they're just appreciating it in others, because it's uplifting to them. It's like a high vibrational, but that's an important point as well. A person who has the moon in Pisces has to be very discerning about what they take into their consciousness. And if you are into new age stuff and all of that, spiritual stuff, people have heard this for everybody, that everybody has to be like this, but especially the moon in Pisces, because it's like a psychic sponge, and it really soaks in the vibrations, and um, doesn't have that tendency to kind of rein it in, and is just kind of like this, with no boundaries, like this antenna picking up all the things that come up, but not being discerning about it. And it can just kind of, you don't want seeds to get planted that are not coming from a good fruit, that aren't going to bear good fruit. And this is like, a child who has the moon in Pisces, who sees a scary movie, they could have nightmares for a month afterwards. Pisces rules the 12th house, and that can be the dream state. But, the dream state can sometimes be nightmares, not just pleasant dreams. And that's because fantasy and reality are very difficult for Pisces to separate themselves from. And this is why Pisces is associated, or Neptune, the ruler, is associated with addiction, because that's a form of escapism. But substance abuse is only one form of escapism. There's also sex and pornography. There is, just being on the internet all the time or watching TV all the time. Anything where you're trying to take your mind off of whatever's bothering you, and you're just kind of like trying to escape from it. And it actually can can be a good thing, because it's like Teal Swan talks about this in her book, her first book called The Sculptor in the Sky, which I highly recommend, about you're making the point of attraction something that is not a negative thing. So if you see an old movie and it makes you laugh, that is a higher vibration than focusing on your problems. But the problem is that when people do this habitually, they begin to experience avoidance. And so they're not dealing with even just practical things that, move their lives forward. So this is one of the good things about this combination, is that the moon in Capricorn individual can help that Pisces person become more disciplined emotionally. And as for the Capricorn individual, they may have had a mother who was very ambitious for them and pushed them to succeed in life. So this person can be very emotionally attached to this idea of, I have to be a success, whether it's because they want to please the mother, whether it's because they want to prove that they're okay. And the reason that this can be dangerous or problematic is because, first of all, we don't know what the true definition of successful is. Is it, making X amount of money, having this type of career versus another type of career, like what makes a person successful. And that person, the emotions, I say this a lot, I feel emotions can be irrational. And so people get emotionally attached to something based on this concept that may not even be their ideas. It might be coming from somewhere else, but they have kind of um, absorbed this because they decided that this was what was true, but really it wasn't. And so, using the example of the mother who is very pushy about their child becoming a success, that child may be afraid of displeasing his mother because maybe she was very conditional in her love. When he got good grades in school, she was beaming and she was happy. And when he um, got mediocre grades, then she was cold to him. And so that conditional response can set up somebody who is trying to succeed, but really emotionally, if you really um, analyze it, it's because deep down inside they've attached success to love, to being loved, because of how they were treated. So this person can be somebody that's very fear-based about their work or their job, whatever you want to call it, where they're like, oh my God, I can't get fired, or I have to climb the ladder of success. This can also play into money issues as well, where the person is very, I was going to say miserly, but we could say economical. I remember I was working someplace and I said to one of my coworkers, "You're very economical." And this person, English wasn't their first language, but they took it almost like an insult. But they laughed about it because it seemed like I was saying they were a cheapskate or something. And so that can, the British have a term for somebody who's stingy. They say mean. And it's funny, in United States we say mean means somebody who's not nice. But the Pisces moon sign might think it's not very nice of that Capricorn moon sign to be very tight with the purse strings. So that could be one of those things. Not to say that Pisces moon sign is going to be a spendthrift, but it's just that there is a side that is not very practical and is not very grounded in the 3D reality. Okay. Now again, if the sun sign is an earth, that will modify this tendency. But I still think that such a person will be much more, open about it, unless they come from a background of deprivation, economic deprivation, and then they might be quite similar to the moon in Capricorn, for the simple fact that they want that financial security. So that could be one issue that there are clashes over, which is the way that the two people view money. Maybe not. Maybe other factors will support being on the same page with that. Another thing can be the way, the emotional response. So the person with the moon in Pisces may feel that the person with the moon in Capricorn is a bit of a hard ass, is a little bit too severe and harsh when it comes to other people's problems, including their own. I'm talking about the moon in Pisces problems. Again, if the Cap moon person has a sun in water, they may be more sensitive. But in general, they might just be like, hey, you have to have a tough exterior. You can't go around with a wearing your heart on your sleeve. You have to, life is a tough thing that you have to cope with. And it's not that they're trying to be cruel, they just have that hard boiled attitude towards life. And sometimes, the school of hard knocks, that kind of thing. And they don't, but, if they say, I graduated from the school of hard knocks, they're not saying that to be a victim. Maybe if their sun is in Pisces, but in general, they're saying this because they want people to know that they have been through the fire and that they have bought the t-shirt, but they are not allowing that to define them. They're not going to allow themselves to be an eternal victim simply because they came from a past where that is something that they had to contend with. Is that good or bad? I think it's pretty laudable. But sometimes that individual may need to let down their barriers because they might have very rigid barriers emotionally and they might keep things to themselves. Even the moon in Pisces can be secretive emotionally, come to think of it. And so both of these people need to be able to share with one another what they're feeling emotionally. So they're not living in their own private, you know, crying sessions. They're not like trying to hide from the other person their true feelings. Because when you're in a relationship with somebody that is serious, especially when you bare your soul to that person, what's going to happen is that person, unless they're a complete asshat, and in which case you don't want to be with them anyway, but if they're a nice, understanding person, they're going to take that information that you have provided about some of the painful experiences in your life and they're going to understand you better. They're going to be, if you tell your partner that you were sexually abused, then they're not like this complete user who's just trying to use you for sex and they really do love you or care about you, then they're going to go, oh, so that's why whenever I touch her or whenever I touch him, they tense up. And they're like, I thought it was because they didn't find me attractive, but really they have trauma around this issue. And it will add to that closeness and they will appreciate that in you and they will be more understanding. But unfortunately, a lot of people carry all of this within themselves and then they lament the fact that the other person doesn't get them emotionally, but they really haven't put themselves out there. And you can't necessarily do this with everybody. Not everybody can be trusted. So I'm not saying that you tell your life story to strangers. I'm saying that when you're in that dating phase, when you're getting to know somebody and you haven't gotten serious yet, but you're getting there, that you are able to be less superficial and more in depth in how you share with the other person. And this goes for both parties. I think that the moon in Pisces person is romantic, the moon in Capricorn, not so much. Unless, again, they have the moon in water, or if they have the moon in fire. Fire is very romantic too. I'm sorry, sun in uh, sun and water, sun and fire. They'll tend to be more romantic. But in any case, I think women in particular make the mistake of kind of castigating or coming down on a man who is, not really sharing, not romantic or saying I love you all the time, and they act like, oh, that person doesn't love me, they're cold, whatever. But really, talk is cheap. If that person is loyal to you, if they are helpful to you, they seem to care about you, you don't need you don't need certain words, you don't need to have gifts to prove that that person loves you. That's what the world wants us to think, that we have to um, make sure that that person loves us by them doing certain things or saying certain things. Really, you can tell if somebody cares about you by how they, overall, how they treat you. It's easy to buy somebody a gift. It's easy to say something that somebody wants to hear. So, the Moon and Capricorn person, whether it's a male or a female, um, may not feel comfortable saying, romantic things. But do you really need that? Is that person, um, can you tell that that person cares about you in other ways? And if so, be grateful for that. Okay, well, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a personal reading, I have relationship readings, I have chart interpretations. Please see the link below. Take care. Bye.